Tourism Specialist at the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, JC. And today we are here to sensitize you, the stakeholders, the community members of Bath, all interested persons, regarding the Bath Botanical Gardens Rehabilitation Project. We're here to host the project information meeting because we have just signed the contract. We are ready to start this project to rehabilitate the Bath Botanical Gardens. I'd like to recognize in the audience the Member of Parliament for St. Thomas Eastern, Miss Yvonne Rose Shaw. Welcome, MP. I'd also like to recognize the CEO of the St. Thomas Municipal Corporation, Mr. Kevin McIndoe. I'd also like to recognize Mr. Michael Williams, the Superintendent of the Public Gardens Division in the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, as well as all the other members of the Ministry of Agriculture team who are here today. They are the direct beneficiaries of this project. I'd also like to recognize the Tourism Product Development Company, who is also an instrumental stakeholder and partner in this project. They worked with the Ministry of Agriculture team to prepare the grant application for the rehabilitation of the Bath Botanical Gardens, which was submitted through the Ministry of Tourism to JCIF for implementation. I'd also like to recognize Ms. Nordia Hamilton, who has been a part of this project from the get-go. I don't see Mr. Damian Shirley from TPDCO, but yes, Mr. Shirley, as well as Mrs. Kerry-Ann Lowe Mullings, the Director of Product Development and Community Tourism at TPDCO. I'd also like to acknowledge Inspector Donald Burke from the Bath Police Division. Thank you for coming here, as well as the other officers who are here with you. All guests, the team from JSAFE, my colleagues, thank you for coming out here today to help to sensitize the community about this project. So, let me get into the purpose of this meeting. So we are here to begin the implementation of the Bath Botanical Gardens Rehabilitation Project, to outline the details of the project, discuss the responsibilities of stakeholders involved in implementation, and agree on how we will communicate and collaborate throughout the implementation of this project. A quick background about JSIF. The Jamaica Social Investment Fund was established in 1996 as a project implementation agency on behalf of the government of Jamaica. The JSIF is dedicated to mobilizing and channeling resources to community-based socioeconomic projects to improve the quality of life of Jamaicans. So we are implementing this project through the REDI II project, and REDI II stands for the Second Rural Economic Development Initiative. It is being administered through JSIF, and it is financed through a loan agreement between the government of Jamaica and the World Bank. And the entire value of the project, which began in 2020, in the heights of COVID, is US $40 million. It is currently being issued as grants to the local agriculture and tourism sectors with two categories of beneficiaries. One, agriculture and community tourism enterprises, that is component one, and component two, public institutions like Bath. So the objective of REDI is to enhance access to markets and to climate resilient approaches for targeted beneficiaries. I mentioned that this project falls under component two, as Bath is a public institution. So to continue with REDI, the REDI II project enhances agriculture and tourism linkages, increases efficiency through the introduction of climate smart technology, improves productivity of local enterprises, invests in public infrastructure like Bath Botanical Gardens, builds beneficiaries' business management skills, and facilitates practices to safeguard the most vulnerable, women, youth, elderly, persons with disabilities. I mentioned earlier that Bath falls under component 2, and that covers climate resilient agriculture and community tourism investments for rural enterprises. So this component promotes the development of agriculture and community tourism rural enterprises to operate competitively in selected value chains. The Bath sub-project is designed to enhance the gardens by promoting sustainable heritage tourism experiences through expanded tours, cultural and leisure events, and the enhancement of the plant nursery. I mentioned earlier the key partners. So the key partners here are JSIF, the Ministry of Tourism, the TPDCO, and the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining. The key drivers of the project are at JSIF, our project manager, Mrs. Dainty and Barry Smith, myself, the tourism specialist, our project engineer, Mr. Ajane Bins, our senior social officer, Mrs. Tashika Dawson, who could not be here today, she has another engagement, our environmental officer, Adam Burton, our monitoring and evaluation specialist is not mentioned there, however, she's Felice Brown, she's with us today, and her role is critical in terms of ensuring that we understand that the project meets its objectives in terms of the number of beneficiaries and the stated outcomes, and she will speak more on this during the presentation. The other key driver of the project is the contractor, which is here today, that is SM Quality Construction Limited, as well as the consultant supervisor, SEAC Solutions Company Limited. They were responsible for designing the project, and they will also supervise the project, supervising the contractor, which is SM Quality Construction Limited. As for the scope of works of the project, we will be renovating the office building you see at the front there, including the installation of an awning to protect against rainfall, the construction and renovation of a gazebo. One over that side will be renovated, and another that was damaged and destroyed at the front will be replaced. We will renovate bathrooms to include the addition of male and female stalls with disability access and dedicated changing stations for babies. We will construct a shade house to grow 300 seedlings per quarter, repair fencing to include Georgian style wrought iron perimeter fencing as well as chain link fencing. We will do drip irrigation through a sprinkler system for distribution over the property. And we will rehabilitate the walkway using asphaltic concrete. And to ensure that this investment is sustained, we will invest in the equipment that will be needed to maintain the property, including a ladder, lawnmower, telepruner, and we'll also ensure that the security of the site is covered as well through the provision of CCTV cameras. All right, so I'm going to, quickly, so this is our layout. This is a layout of the gardens, and I want to touch on the beneficiaries. So the project will directly benefit 2,000 persons, and those persons come from the Bath community, the Ministry of Agriculture team, the staff that works here, the TPDCO team involved. It involves tour guides who take visitors to the gardens, to the community. It involves other business owners that are connected through the value chain, as well as the wider parish of St. Thomas will indirectly benefit. So I wanted to touch quickly on the JSIF project cycle, not to complicate things. We'll see appraisal. So this is where we receive an application, and the JSIF team will appraise the project. We will do site visit assessments to ascertain the viability of the project to meet with the community. The second stage is formulation and design, where we design the project itself and we get various approvals within JSIF to ensure that this project is value for money, it will benefit the community, it makes fiscal sense, it makes financial sense. The third layer you see there is contracting, is when we go out to procure a contractor to do the works, to do the infrastructure works. And now where we're at right now is supervision, because we have now gotten a contractor, we are ready to implement, and we will supervise the implementation of the project. And following supervision, after 5 months, because the duration of the project will be 5 months, we will reach practical completion. However, after practical completion, we will have a 6-month period of defects liability. And during that period, the beneficiaries can note all of the enhancements that have been done. If there are any defects in the work, they can report it, and it will be addressed by the contractor during that 6-month period. After that 6-month period, the beneficiary cannot report any defects. So you have 6 months after practical completion. And once that 6-month period has ended, then we will reach final completion, where we can hand over the project to the beneficiary and the community. And we will all be excited to see the end product of these enhancements. So quickly, some important dates. We signed the contract on January 13. We had a kickoff meeting between JSIF, the consultants, and the contractor as required. And then we officially commenced the project on January 27 per our contract with the contractor. We did a site handover meeting last week Friday, January 30 here, and we are now doing the project information meeting today. The project duration, as I mentioned before, is 5 months. So practical completion should be achieved around June 27, 2026, after which we will have the 6-month defects liability period. These are the lines of communication, very important. So JSIF, as the implementers of the REDI II project, as well as the sub-project Rehabilitating the Bath Botanical Gardens, are the main stakeholder here, the key organization. The contractor, SM Quality, can communicate directly with JSIF, and they also communicate directly with the supervisors, SIAC Solutions Limited. So the contractor and the consultants communicate directly to each other. The project beneficiary, which is the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries Public Gardens Division, Bath Botanical Gardens, they communicate directly with the consultants, SIAC Solutions Company Limited, as well as JSIF. So I will end my part of the presentation here, and then our project engineer will continue. But JSIF's responsibilities here is to provide funding for the project through, as I mentioned before, this overall REDI II project is funded through a loan agreement between the GOJ and the World Bank. JSIF is also responsible for ensuring that standards are maintained during project implementation, and to conduct regular site visits and meetings with the contractor and the consultant involved. All right, so Mr. Ajane Vince will come to speak about the beneficiary's responsibilities.
Good morning, everybody. So it should be in the beneficiary's best interest to follow the progress of project implementation, meaning how things are progressing on site as the contractors carry out their aspects of the works. They should participate, or they are welcome to participate in site meetings and walkthroughs, inspections, etc., etc. They'll be integral in signing off on a completed project that's following the 6 months or the implementation period. And they should, as alluded to by my colleague, report any defects during that period as well. The flip side of that same coin, however, the beneficiaries, they should not demand any portion of money from the contractor. They shouldn't demand any employment opportunities from the contractor. they shouldn't remove from the project site any equipment, furniture, appliances, or goods purchased with the money supplied by JSIF. And last but not least, they should not issue or give any instructions to contractors, as we have lines of communication, as was mentioned by Larissa earlier. The consultants, unfortunately, they are not here. They couldn't make it. Them being SIAC Solutions Limited, their responsibility during this phase of the project is to ensure that all the construction works meet specifications and the drawings are followed. They should monitor the quality of the workmanship and materials being used, ensure that the contractor is compliant with all health and safety and environmental guidelines, as well as to review the progress of the works and make recommendations of payments, and to act as a liaison or the middle person between the contractors, the beneficiaries, and ourselves here at JSF. So site meetings will be held monthly, and those expected to attend are the contractors or representatives from the contractor, consultants, representatives from JSF, and also reps from the ministries, Public Gardens Division, and TVEco. So at the end of this project, we are expected to, or the park is expected to have increased earnings through higher visitor numbers, as well as the sale of plants and seedlings from the plant nursery. Where sustainability is concerned, environmental sustainability, through the management of the wastewater, their treatment and irrigation, and the improvement or beautification, the aesthetics of the entirety of the park will be improved, and no doubt the maintenance approaches and so on, as we are slated to hand over some equipment and stuff. And last but not least, the promotion of ecotourism or heritage tourism, as it is now. So this ends my portion of the presentation, and I'll turn over to my colleague for the social safeguards. But after the presentation.
Good morning. Ensures that all these expectations, all stakeholders who are involved in the project, sees the improvement and receive the results they are expected. So social safeguards is really defined as measures put in place to protect the people and communities from negative impacts of the project. So it ensures that people's rights, their livelihoods, their health and well-being are not harmed. And it's not just a JSIF thing, it's not just a contractor responsibility, but all stakeholders are involved. It's a joint responsibility shared by everyone, right? And it captures a range of considerations or issues. The main two types are labor, sexual harassment, exploitation, and abuse. As it relates to the labor considerations, it focuses on the who and the how. So we have our national laws that protect our children, right? So no child under the age of 15 are allowed to work, right? And it also provides protection against forced labor. Forced labor when you are put to work against your will, right? It looks at how employees are treated. So the contractors, employees, or personnel, how they are treated, and it ensures that there are fairness and certain things are put in place to protect the employees, right? So it looks at fair treatment, it looks at There are work agreements in place, and it should be clear, and terms and conditions of the employment, such as their wages, their working hours, and the benefits that they are entitled to, should be outlined in the work agreement. It looks on safety in the work environment, so it ensures that persons are provided with the necessary tools, looking at their personal protective equipments. First aid kits should be present, right? It looks at the grievance redress mechanism. So there must be an avenue in place so that employees can make their concerns heard. If there are any issues, employees have an avenue to report them and to have them addressed. It also looks at emergency protocols. Those things should in place. So for example, if there is a fire, what are the protocols for evacuation, right? Are there assembly points for employees to go to? And what should happen in terms of any emergency? As it relates to employment, in terms of the work site, there must be an employment coordinator. So an employment coordinator would be selected by the community, and this person is responsible for identifying persons with different skill sets who are interested in working on the project sites. So the employment coordinator would create what we call a skill bank or a pool listing the name of these persons, what their skill sets are, and what their interest is. And it's from this pool that the contractor would select persons to work on the project sites. Just to note that employees must have an identification to collect wages. So in order to get your pay, your ID must be present, right? And we know the acceptable forms of ID, your national ID, your driver's license, or your passport. Payment may be done via check, bank transfers, or cash. As it relates to sexual harassment, we know that sexual harassment is an offense, right? And it's punishable by law. So sexual harassment is in relation to any unwelcome, unwanted, physical, verbal, or non-verbal sexual conduct which is offensive or humiliating to the recipient. And so sexual harassment behavior is strictly prohibited, right? And there are two types. One, it looks at what we call this or that. So it's really providing sexual favors in exchange of something favorable. So for example, providing sexual favors to get a job or to get increased pay, right? It also looks at toxic work environment. And when we mention toxic work environment, we're talking about person's actions or their attitude that may create unpleasant working environment. So we spoke about the verbal communication. You know, persons may use certain slangs, talk about your body, unwanted touching. Those are prohibited. So just moving on in relation to the various responsibilities. As I mentioned earlier, all stakeholders have a responsibility to play as it relates to our construction company, which is our contractor, SMN Quality Construction Limited. Their responsibilities include to create an awareness among personnel on the applicable aspects of the contract, to ensure relevant communication is maintained, to collaborate with various stakeholders, and to develop practical solutions in the event there are issues to be addressed, to use best endeavors to prevent any unlawful or disorderly conduct among personnel. As it relates to our implementing partner, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining Public Gardens Division, their responsibility includes to submit questions and concerns through JSIF's grievance redress mechanism, to collaborate with various stakeholders to develop practical solutions, and also to appoint a labor liaison officer. And the labor liaison officer is someone who would be the point person to communicate with. If there's an issue needs to be addressed, then the communications goes through the labor liaison officer. And this is issues in relation to the project site. For JCIF, our responsibility includes respond to any grievances submitted through our grievance redress mechanism, to collaborate with our stakeholders to develop practical solutions to address these issues, to enforce the penalties outlined in the contract, which in some cases may call for contract termination. And in relation to our grievance redress mechanism, these are the avenues exist for persons to make complaints, or if there is any concern or any recommendations to be made, persons can reach out to JCIF via these contacts. So you can contact our senior social officer directly, Mrs. Tashika Dawson, and the number is on screen. We also have our other project team members, our tourism specialists, Ms. Larissa McBean, our project engineer, Mr. Ajane Binns, as well, can be reached. You may contact the office and ask to speak with any of those persons. And JCIF can also be reached by our social media platforms, and we are located at the address on screen, 8 Richmond Avenue, Kingston 10. All right, so I'll segue into monitoring and evaluation aspect of the project. So when we speak about monitoring and evaluation, it sounds technical, right? But we do it in our everyday life, right? For example, if you're cooking, you monitor, right? You ensure that you check to see what is happening, that the food don't get burned, the food is cooking, right? So just our daily activities involve monitoring and evaluation. But as it relates to the project, we want to ensure that we make a deliberate effort to integrate monitoring and evaluation into the project, because we want to ensure that we track performance to see how the project is going, and it also helps us to flag any risks, any challenges early, so that we can implement corrective actions to address those. Also, there are different objectives, and my colleague Ms. McBean would have mentioned some of those objectives and the outcomes expected. And so in order to determine whether or not we are meeting these objectives and reaching our results or our outcomes, we need to ensure that we conduct monitoring and evaluation. Right, so quickly, just to give a brief definition, monitoring is really the continuous tracking of activities and the progress, right? While evaluation is periodic assessment of results to determine effectiveness and how beneficial the project is to our various stakeholders. Why M&E matters? It ensures implementation is on schedule and within scope. So we know for project environment, there are various timelines that we are required to adhere to. And so to monitor what is happening, the activities on the ground, to ensure that we keep within that time frame, right? It also allows us to track progress, as I mentioned, towards our objectives. And for our project, there are various targets that we are required to meet, and in order to determine whether we are achieving those targets, we have to monitor, right? It helps us to understand what works on the project, what does not work, and why, so we can implement corrective measures, right? And it supports learning. What we monitor, right? So some of our key indicators are some of the areas or aspects that we are required to monitor, includes in terms of the number of operating public infrastructure that we support. We also need to monitor how many persons are trained. And it was mentioned earlier that we are big on in terms of social inclusion and gender responsiveness. And so we want to ensure that our vulnerable groups, or women or youth, persons with disabilities, are also integrated into our project and they are benefiting from the project. Right, looking in terms of REDI II is an economic development project, and so we want to ensure that market access is being achieved. We want to look at in terms of visitor attraction to our Bath botanical sites. We're looking at how beneficial is this project to the community at large. Is it creating jobs? Is it sustaining jobs? Looking at how is it contributing to tourism-related incomes. And also to mention climate resilience, which is very important, right? We are so prone to these various natural disasters, and we have seen them occurring so often. There are other what we call cross-cutting indicators. We're looking at grievance redress and client feedback. We want to ensure that any concerns, any complaints that our stakeholders have, whether it's from the community or implementing partners, those are addressed and persons are satisfied with the project. As I mentioned earlier, every partner plays a role, right? In monitoring evaluation. It's not the M&E specialist thing, it's not a one-person thing, it's everybody's business. And so in terms of us as the project team, we would do the coordination, we carry out our monitoring and evaluation of the activities being implemented, and we do our reporting. Our implementing partners from the ministry are also key in terms of undertaking M&E activities, monitoring progress, and also doing their reporting, right? Our tourism operators, our key stakeholders, and the communities, we want to ensure that their feedback is heard and any disagreements, any issues will be addressed, right? Record keeping is also very important. So in order for us to know that we are reaching our results, we need to document these things. So while we may do a site visits and carry out our monitoring activities, it's important for us to document these to provide evidence-based results, right? All of this is a shared responsibility. So as I wrap up, I just want to quickly outline in terms of the key takeaways. M&E helps the project to be on track. It supports transparency, so everybody, the community, and all the stakeholders for this project should be in the know, understand what is happening with the project and how beneficial is the project to them. It enables timely corrective action, and it ensures tourism investments achieve the intended results. And finally, just to outline in terms what we call a results chain, this is just showing the link between all the activities across the project. So we're looking at the inputs relates to the financing and how that translates into the activities that will be carried out, whether the infrastructure works or training. And as a result of these activities, we are expected of certain outputs in terms of the upgraded facilities and persons being trained. These outputs now leads to a short or mid-term results, which what we call our outcomes in terms of job creation, improve market access, right, in tourism. And looking at the bigger picture, which is the impact. How does this project ensure sustainable, inclusive tourism growth? Thank you. And I now hand over to my next colleague, Mr. Burton.
Thanks again, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Adam Burton, Environmental Officer at the Jamaica Social Investment Fund. So I'll be taking you through the environmental aspect of this presentation. Right? So at the Jamaica Social Investment, ISO 14001 2015 certified. So this is an internationally recognized certification that sets a framework it helps us to, it gives us a framework that we can use to establish our own environmental management systems. Now, at JSF we do a lot of different projects. So we do construction projects, we do rehabilitation projects, and doing those projects, they come with certain level of impacts, and our donors or our funders, they require us to manage our environmental performance when implementing these works projects. And importantly, consultants and contractors will need to adhere to the standard of this certification because they reflect JSF. Okay, thank you. Now, so let's jump into it. So having this certification in place, it comes with quite a few benefits. All right. So what it does, it helps us to maintain a safe working environment. So it outlines procedures that we can use to maintain a safe work environment. It helps us to protect community health and safety. So it gives us the guidelines that we can use to do that. It helps with environmental sustainability. It helps us to comply with our funders' safeguards. It helps us to also comply with national laws and overall help us to develop a culture of environmental health and safety in Jamaica, especially in regards to projects, construction projects, and works projects. Now, when it comes down to the environmental responsibility, each stakeholders or each party involved in the project have their own roles and responsibility in regards to environmental health and safety. So from JSF ends, we are responsible to contract the most qualified contractors so that we can get the best project possible. All right. We also have the responsibility of providing funding for environmental health and safety. So in the project's contract, we will include a sum that will cover environmental health and safety. So that sum will include cover like personal protective equipment. So it will cover hard hat, vests, hoarding for the site, signage, and so forth and so on. All right. JSF will conduct their independent monitoring and evaluation. So our technical officers will typically visit each project site preferably twice per month to carry out their normal monitoring visit. So this is range from technical assessment to social assessment to environmental assessment, and we do this on a monthly basis for every project site and prepare the reports accordingly. And of course, it is JSF's responsibility to take corrective action for environmental breaches. Alright? And of course, develop and implement environmental health and safety policies. In regard to the contractor, it is their responsibility to work safely. And of course, the workers, it is their responsibility to work safely. And it is also the responsibility of the workers to ensure that at all times they wear all the applicable personal protective equipment. So no worker working on the project here at Botanical Garden should be working without wearing the applicable personal protective equipment. And at minimum, we require them to have a safety vest, a cover toe shoes, and of course a hard hat where necessary. All right. It is also the responsibility of the workers to ensure that they maintain a tidy work environment, especially within this space, which is a very important space, a very sensitive space. It is their responsibility to ensure that they work and keep the place tidy at all times. It is also the responsibility of the workers to ensure that they report unsafe conditions. So if they see a location on the site that possible threat to persons on site, it is their responsibility to ensure that they report it to the appropriate personnel so that the necessary corrective actions can be implemented accordingly. Now, when the contractors end, it is the contractor's responsibility to ensure that they comply with all the applicable environmental, health and safety laws. It is also the responsibility of the contractor to provide the personal protective equipment that we would have included the sum in the contractor purchase. So we would include the sum for the personal protective equipment, but it's the responsibility of the contractor to ensure that they purchase these equipment and they issue them accordingly to the workers on site. And of course, it is also the responsibility of the contractor to ensure that they implement environmental health and safety mitigation. So if, for example, if it is a case where the site is being accessed by unauthorized personnel, it is the contractor's responsibility to ensure that they put in place proper hoarding, which will prevent unauthorized access to the project site. This can be kids who can come on the site unauthorized. Nobody is aware that they're on the site and they got hurt. So to prevent this, the contractor is to ensure that unauthorized access is being prevented at all times. And of course, the contractor should maintain a safe environment for not just the project site, but the community on a whole. Right? For the consultant, they should ensure that they enforce environmental health and safety standards. It is their responsibility to also ensure that environmental health and safety mitigation measures are implemented. It is also the responsibility of the consultant to monitor the project sites for potential hazards. So typically the consultant would have a clerk of works on the site who will manage things from an environmental standpoint on a daily basis. And of course, the consultant is responsible to ensure that they report environmental health and safety issues. Now, this is a works project, so it is expected that some level of construction will be taking place on the grounds here. From that, it is expected that we can expect some potential impact. Now, under the environmental management systems, we call the potential impact, we call them aspects. There's a lot of aspects that can come out of a project. However, we're going to focus on the significant aspects today. So we're going to focus on the potential impact, the most likely potential impact from the implementation of this project, all right? So implementing a works project, you can expect that there will be occupational health and safety concerns, all right? And some of these occupational health and safety concerns range from disability or death, temporary or permanent injury, loss of limb, sight or hearing, burns, laceration, puncture wounds, contagious disease, acute chronic illnesses, and loss of livelihood. Now, to mitigate these potential impact, what we encourage persons to do is to always wear the appropriate personal protective equipment. So, to protect your eyes, if you're working and there's a lot of dust, then you expect that, okay, you're going to be wearing your dust mask and possibly goggles to protect your eye and of course your respiratory system. You will wear a safety vest to ensure that you're visible while on site, and of course your feet should always be covered. You don't have to necessarily wear a steel toe shoes, but at minimum your feet needs to be fully covered. Alright? We ask that barricades be installed around hazardous location, and of course erect sufficient and appropriate signage on site. and provide, of course, potable water to persons on site working, especially on days when it's really hot. All right, so we want to ensure that workers on site have access to potable water at all times, and a well-equipped bathroom should also be provided on site, so that persons working on site can carry out the normal bodily function. Another significant aspect or another significant potential impact is dust, which is highly likely because this is a works project, so we can expect that some level of excavation will be taking place. We might have soil store and location for some time. So some of the impacts that is associated with dust or particulate matter is respiratory illnesses, eye infection, death, reduced visibility to vehicular traffic, and of course defacing of building. And I know that persons living within this space can attest to that. During the construction of the main road, we see some of the impacts of dust pollution. So to mitigate this, what we encourage is that we cover spoil or aggregates on site. Once it is not being used, we always keep it covered. All right. We cover waste during transportation. Also, we can't expect to be transporting excavated spoils in an open truck. We need to have that covered. Of course, we encourage wetting of the site, preferably at a 3-hour interval or as often as needed, and of course wearing the appropriate personal protective equipment. So for dust, you want to ensure that you have your dust mask and of course a goggle that protects your eyes. Another potential impact as a result of the implementation of this project is noise pollution, and some of the risks that is associated with noise pollution would have been temporary hearing loss, permanent hearing loss, high blood pressure, frequent headaches, sleeplessness, or insomnia. Now, to prevent or to mitigate these potential impacts, we ask that works be kept within the hours of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. If we're going beyond that, we ask that persons from the community is consulted and made aware that we might be going beyond our normal work period. So, please bear with us while we do that. We always try to encourage contractors to ensure that the machinery is being used on site is always well equipped, so that we limit the amount of pollution, especially with the rate of climate change. Having a machine that needs to be serviced on site, we can attest to the fact that it will release a lot of CO2 emission, and that is one of the driver of climate change. All right. Another significant potential impact is solid waste management. So, implementing a project, we can expect that there will be some level of solid waste, and it will need to be managed for various reasons. Right. So, some of the risks that is associated with improper management of solid waste is flooding, because if the waste gets into the drain, block the drainage, then the water has nowhere to go. If the water doesn't have nowhere to go, then we can expect that some level of flooding will occur. All right. Vermin infestation, which includes rat, flies, outbreak of disease, unpleasant odor, management of solid waste also. And of course environmental pollution and trip and fall hazards. To mitigate some of these risks that is associated with solid waste management, we ask that we install bins on site and of course clean up regularly. All right. Reuse waste on site where necessary, especially excavated spoil, so we can use those to the backfill and all of that. And of course, waste is expected to be stored in a designated area, and we encourage the timely disposal of waste and the covering of waste during transportation. Alright, so during the implementation of this project, we expect that we encourage the contractors to ensure that all the applicable signage is installed on site or erected on site to give persons directions, those who want to navigate the project site, and some general environmental health and safety risk mitigation is listed right here. So we encourage that first aid kit is always on site. Hoarding, we encourage that hoarding is erected where necessary to again prevent unauthorized access to the project site. So hoarding is that temporary structure that they would put up around a project site to prevent persons from just in and out or entering the project site. Yes, and so that takes me to the end of my presentation, and now you can ask your questions, share your comments, your concerns.
As Adam just mentioned, we will now be taking your questions, and we have our stakeholders here, as perhaps some of the questions or comments you may have may be best directed to one of our stakeholders. So please let us know if you have any questions or comments, and we will do our best to address them.
I did have a couple questions as a member or resident of the surrounding area. My first question was, who exactly will be responsible for the day-to-day oversight when the project is finished? I'm not sure.
When the project is finished?
Yes, and you guys hand it over, I'm not sure, over to.
Okay. Is here are the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, specifically the Public Gardens Division. This gentleman sitting in front of you is the superintendent of the Public Gardens Division at the MOAFM. He's Mr. Michael Williams. So once we complete our project into the 5 months implementation period, and the 6-month defects liability period has also elapsed, then it will be handed over to the Ministry's Public Gardens Division. They will be responsible.
Excellent. So is there a place on how or if the Botanical Gardens is to earn income to maintain itself after? Because, you know, we plan for it to be great, but, you know, it naturally will degrade and there will be use. So I just wanted to know, how will that be maintained so it doesn't fall back to, you know, misuse?
Yeah. And a part of our scope of work, which I outlined, was the provision of equipment. That will not be all, but it will contribute, you know, to the upkeep of the gardens. But I want Mr. Williams to respond to that question after the project ends.
Us or?
Not at this time.
Okay. And how do we contact you so that we are kept abreast of what's happening?
Okay, so the relevant information will be shared where you can speak to secretary and admin. Thanks.
And when will you be sharing that information? I'm sorry.
We can speak further after. Okay?
Okay,
Thanks.
sure thing.
Here, I see places anxious to get your address and telephone number. She can correspond with you. You are part of the progress. Welcome that. Right?
I am a business owner within the environment, and my business, because of course tourism is a big part of this whole thing.
I know that my business depends on the tourism and the tourists who come in, because they will eventually have to pass where we are going to be set up. So knowing how it will run, when will the access be, this is information we can always also share with the tourists who are coming to our space in order to broaden the net, that everybody gets some sort of support.
welcome your interest now what's happening here at the gardens, and I'm hoping that your interest reflects those of the broader community. But I can say from the Ministry of Agriculture, which is a mining perspective, you're not hearing? Any better? Yes. All right. But from the Ministry of Agriculture's perspective, we have in place systems over to us. So there's no need for us to be overly concerned about that. We won't be charging any exorbitant fees because this is a public space, and so we want to have as much persons as possible benefit from the relaxation that we'll be providing. We do have a wide cadre of expertise in different areas, and so what we'll be doing is putting those together so that garden will be maintained and exceed the expectations that most persons will want to see the gardens in. And so we really appreciate the gesture that Joseph is doing. But also, I'm impressed with the turnout, the level of interest that is being shown by the person, the stakeholders present at this meeting. So, moving forward, we expect this, and at the same time, if there are persons who want to volunteer to participate in the opening of the garden, that is something that we'll be willing to think about.
To hear us, sensitize you about this project, and you understand the importance of it. We've given you our contact details to reach out to JSIF as the project implementers. Any concerns you may have. You also have the Ministry of Agriculture team, the Public Gardens Division, the staff work here at Bath Botanical Gardens, the superintendent. His staff are here all the time, so that you can, I suppose, they can make contact with anybody here. Feel free to reach out to us. Our team will, as we outlined in our presentation, we will have monthly meetings, so you can look out for that. The community, I'm sure you received the charge of your Member of Parliament to come together, to work together to make this project a success and to really benefit from it. We expect that a number of employment opportunities will be here. Not expect, we know. A number of persons will be employed to do labor related to the project. And so just make the best of the opportunity, and we will be here over the next 5-6 months as we implement the project and see it to its completion when we hand it over to the Ministry of Agriculture. All right.
I just want to add my little bit. Just want to thank all the stakeholders that have worked tirelessly over the years to bring this project to fruition. And I'm very pleased to be associated with this project. What I want to say and appeal to the community must come together. You must be the guardian and the protector of this project. Now, I don't want to be somewhere and hear that there are problems on this project, because we are and we must protect this little community of Bath. A few days ago there was bad publicity, and we want to erase that. We want to show them that we can deliver, and we are peace and loving people, and we care about our country, Jamaica land we love. So I am calling on Stewie, Bash, and all of those persons to work diligently with the contractor and to make sure that this project becomes one of the highlights of Bath. Another thing that I would like to say, Ms. McBean, I would like to see collaboration with the hotel, Bath Hotel, with this garden. Right? I want this garden to be of
for educational purposes and also recreation. Right? This botanical garden is one of the oldest botanical gardens in the Caribbean. And this is something, the Western Hemisphere, thank you. This is something that we ought to be proud of and something that we want to protect. And one more thing, I am going to call on TPDCO, Tourism Enhancement Fund, to help me to lobby for the Bath to Port Morant Road. Something is being done at this point, but it is minimal. Over $20 million is being spent, and we need. So I'm gonna call, because what we need proper infrastructure to make sure that this bath is something to be, we can promote. We have our diaspora who comes here, so we want to promote that, and without proper infrastructure, you know what can happen. So once again, I would like to find out from you, Ms. McBean, have you sought to have dialogue with the Bath Fountain in this regard?
Thank you for encouraging the community to come together to ensure that they safeguard this project, they help to safeguard this project and the investment that is being done. What we at JCIP can speak to is the project and the project implementation as it relates to the connection between the Bath Botanical Gardens and the Bath Fountain, Hotel and Spa, which is the responsibility of the Ministry of Tourism. That's a separate conversation. So that conversation will need to be had between the Ministry of Tourism, the TPDCO, the Ministry of Agriculture. However, I can assure you that the Ministry of Tourism has plans in place to connect both the Bath Fountain Hotel and Spa and the Bath Botanical Gardens. However, it's best to speak with those agencies directly about their plans to connect both sides, as they're already integrally connected. All right, so the contractors will be, so because we were having the project information meeting today, we couldn't have had the contractor started setting up works here. You know, before we did the project information meeting, since we were going to have it here. So the Mr. Makala? Mr. Smith? When are you going to start?
Okay, thanks.
As a community representative, I would just like to know who responds for choosing the people from the community to work, who we supposed to talk to in terms of choosing the community people, because I'll get to understand, basically it said that community people will be the first priority for the job. And then who respond to choose the liaison officer also to choose the people to work. Everybody here from community.
Okay. All right, so that decision will be made by the community. That is not made by us.
But what would you say? There's a lot of people in the community, so community who choose the community representative then, that
yes,
is saying?
The community chooses their representative.
All
yes.
right, this is again, so that interested. So we're going to choose it. Because we don't have a community meeting, we don't have a...
So you need to have a community meeting then?
But again...
Okay, so the SDC is offering...
Yeah, I have an understanding, but I have to say it clear that the rest of community people would understand. Because in terms of a project like this, it can cause chaos and confusion, so we need to have it in the right channel. And that's why I wrote those questions.
Beautiful community.
Principal of Bath Primary School. So of course my question is related to children in terms of what type of mechanism or physical thing that will be here in terms of recreational for children as part of your project?
For your question, Mrs. Blake Brown. So while the scope of the project does not include specific recreational implements for children, the space itself is supportive and conducive to children coming into the park to play. The gazebos have the additional one, the one that will be reconstructed, will also have seating. So the space in general is conducive to facilitating children and play and recreational activities. So because the site is a national heritage site and it's a public garden, what's the word I'm looking for? The Public Gardens Act. Right, it's governed by the Public Gardens Act. So we can't just put anything in the garden. We can't just put anything in the space. However, as it is and as it will be enhanced, it will support the recreational activities of children.
Overall cost of this project?
Okay, so...
No, it break down for this project.
Yes.
I don't sure I did say 40 million that US.
Right. No, it's not US. But this Bath Botanical Gardens Rehabilitation Project, the cost is 43.8 million Jamaican dollars.
Okay, everybody hear that now.
Right? And that is broken down into several components. So first, we had to cover the design of the project. So the consultants, the cost for the consultants to design the project and that same consultant to supervise the project, the cost of the contractor to carry out the infrastructure works, inclusive of labor, machinery and all of those inputs, as well as the cost of equipment that will be provided to maintain the garden. So it's a total cost of 43.8 million Jamaican dollars.
I'm glad you clarified.
Sit down, watch your money at the end.
Community of Bath, and I'd like to say to JSC, Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, EPDO, Superintendent, and the community, the municipality, and I don't know what's the same again, and so forth. Thank you for having us here today, and especially to the Jamaica Constabulary Force for providing security for us this morning. There was a question that was asked as it relates to the liaison officer. Well, whenever we go into any form of community, the liaison officer has always been chosen by the member of parliament. That has always been it. I don't know if Bath is going to be doing it different, but we just wanted to have somebody who can work through and without any form of animosity. The specific start date, we will be starting on the Monday following Valentine's Day. It will be somewhere about the
16.
Yeah, somewhere there. That's when we'll be starting. So as it relates to that, what we will be speaking, the liaison officer, we will be speaking to him to get the workers that we need from the community. So you have to make case to have that person put in place.
Your gender bias, man. Him.
So that we can have this project move. And we'll be getting out here as fast as possible. And we hope for your full support. Thank you.